Hey there, everybody. Travis Kern from Root and Branch Chinese Medicine in Portland, Oregon. On my morning drive into the shop as usual, having just left my morning networking group. And I wanted to talk a little bit today about the yin time. That's yin as in yin and yang. I woke up this morning, and here in the Pacific Northwest, the sun doesn't come up in the wintertime until pretty late in the day. I would say it's probably not really up until about 7:15, and then even now it's 8:30 in the morning, and it's pretty overcast. It feels very wintry and heavy. It's actually one of the things that when people move to Portland in particular, since it's a pretty hot city these days, one of the things that people remark is how gloomy it is for much of the year. And I suppose that's true. You know, the fall and winter in Portland is pretty wet. It's cold, but not that cold, maybe 40 degrees. Overcast many days. Though, of course, these days, climate change being what it is, it's a little bit hard to predict. I talk to people who have lived here a lot longer than I have, and they say that things are different now. Hotter summers, colder winters, random sunny days in the wintertime. That didn't used to be the case. But by and large, the Pacific Northwest is a pretty seasonal place. It's very different from where I grew up. I grew up in South Louisiana in New Orleans, and it's mostly hot there. The thing about the wintertime in Louisiana is it'll be really, really hot, and then it'll be suddenly incredibly cold, 30 degrees, and then a week later, it'll be 85 degrees Fahrenheit again, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's a little frenetic, a little difficult to keep track of. But no matter what, even further south, the days are shorter, right? There's less daylight available in the wintertime, more in the summertime. And this rhythmic and cyclical process is the natural occurrence, the natural events upon which the ancient Taoists and observers of Chinese philosophy, upon which Chinese medicine is based. It's how they understood their world, right? I mean, there's no question about a human's place in the world 500, 600 years ago. We were subject to the natural rhythms around us. Without modern electricity, without the ability to air condition spaces, to have refrigeration, what the weather was like, both seasonally and on the daily, made all the difference in the world in how people operated. Earlier this week, my wife and I took a little day trip to Timberline Lodge, which is on Mount Hood, just outside of Portland, Oregon. And it's this beautiful old lodge that was built in the 30s during the Works Progress administration. And it was snowing, it was fantastic. And while we were up there, she and I were talking about the idea that we've really moved away from this rhythmic process of living, right? I mean, in modern life, you can buy an avocado in January, you can get tomatoes grown in hothouses in Mexico in February. You can eat things and live in a way that no one has ever been able to do before the last half century, maybe the last whole century if we're being very generous. Just temperature alone. I mean, imagine the temperature of your house, right? Like, if you want to pay for the electricity, you can crank up the heat in your house so that you can basically walk around naked in January when it's 15 degrees outside, 15 Fahrenheit outside. That's a new phenomenon. I mean, we don't think about that because we've been able to do it for 50, 60 years, but previous to that point, like, there's no way, even with fireplaces in every room, you would have been able to create such a warm and cozy space that you'd be able to walk around naked without fear of falling ill until the modern period. And so what's happened is it's divorced us from the sense that the season matters, right? Because you can wear, a tank top and have an avocado tomato sandwich. Sorry that I'm hating on avocados and tomatoes. I love avocados and tomatoes. But the readily available nature of those foods in a warm environment, surrounded by electric light that allows us to stay up as late as we want, has changed our relationship to the natural process. It means that wintertime is just it's just time for accessories, right? Like, you just take out your scarf and and your jacket, and yeah, it's cold outside, and you're waiting for summer if you're a hot person, or you love the winter if you're a snow person. But in the end, it's not impacting us in the way that it used to, right? Imagine that, in a pre-modern era, and actually into the modern era for a lot of people, wintertime, fall was the opportunity to harvest, right? To take all of the labor from the summer, put that stuff away, can, pack, pickle, store, right? Because you were going to need to eat off of that stuff through the winter, right? This is a skill that most of us have completely forgotten. I mean, tomorrow, if your refrigerator was not available, if your local grocery store were not stocked, what would you do? And I don't mean that to sound like apocalyptic, right? Like this isn't, we're not trying to prepare for the coming zombies. Though maybe you should be prepared. No, I'm kidding. Anyway, it's just a fundamental question about, in such a short amount of time, knowledge that was available to everyday humans all the time is gone. We don't have it anymore. And the question that I am constantly asking myself in the clinic and when I see patients is, what is the effect of that on our health? Right? What is the effect of that on our health, truly? We don't eat the way we used to eat. And I don't mean just, factory farm models and chemical additives and processed food. I just mean the actual foods themselves, the quantity themselves. We no longer have internalized the idea that in the winter time, we should go to bed earlier. We should sleep more. We should try and stay warm, but also recognize that it's cold outside. So we should give our bodies the opportunity to feel the season a little bit. And I see it in my patients, right? I mean, we know, for example, there's a relationship between seasonal affective disorder, SAD, where people, feel sad. I really hope that was an intentional acronym just because it works so well. That there's an effect, or there's a relationship between seasonal affective disorder and vitamin D levels in the body. We know that. We don't know exactly why it happens, but we know that there's a relationship there. And so usually what happens is that when people live in a place like the Pacific Northwest where it's overcast and maybe they don't get outside and expose their face and hands to the requisite amount of sunlight in a day, that we should take a vitamin D supplement, that we should use broad spectrum bulbs in our house to help create those natural rhythms. And what's funny to me about that is, of course, people have lived in parts of the world where it's overcast for a long time, and it would be interesting to know if something like seasonal affective disorder has always been around. Some people speculate that it has. We obviously didn't have a name for it, but that this mechanism was always the same. Or maybe there was something about the way people lived their lives that helped to mitigate the effects of something like seasonal affective disorder. We're just, spitballing here. I don't have any evidence for it, but it's something to think about, right? What I can say I have evidence for, what I do see with my patients, in particular at this time, we're in December, coming up on Christmas, the New Year, the Western New Year is coming, of course, January 1st, and we all know, especially if you go to the gym, that on January 2nd, when you show up at the gym, every single elliptical machine is going to be full. There's going to be a 40-minute wait to do some, basic bench press lifts, because everybody and their mother is getting healthy, right? We also know that that's going to last for about 3.5 weeks, and then come February, there'll be 50% fewer people around, and then by March, it'll be back to how it was in December. And that's a different conversation, our ability to hold on to our commitments and making changes, but it's actually connected to what we're talking about right now. January, from a Chinese medicine point of view, is the deepest, darkest cold that the season offers to us. January, February, right? Each season has markers in it that we call chi nodes that denote the changing of the sort of universal environment and how our bodies and plants and animals and everything in that environment is going to react to those changes. And this year, Chinese New Year, which is the beginning of the spring season, is in the first week of February, where most parts of the country, it's certainly not going to feel like spring in the first week of February. But that's because that's when the season is just beginning. That's when the energy of spring, the nature of spring to grow and to reboot life is just beginning that first week of February 2019. But in January, in the deepest part of the cold, when yin is dominant, and for those of you less familiar with Chinese medicine philosophy, yin is this heavy, dark, substantive, slow-moving, nourishing component of the environment, right? It's its pair to yang. Yang being active and light, fiery and moving, energized, excited, frenetic. Yin is the opposite of that. Slow, heavy, deep, moist, right? It's in the most yin time of the year that our society says you need to hit the gym. You need to be super active. You need to commit to a whole new changing energy of your life. You're going to eat differently. You're going to move differently. Your whole experience of living is going to be different starting January 1st, the deepest, most yin time of the year, right? It's no surprise to me, having now studied Chinese medicine and learned a lot of its wisdom, that so many of us fail at making changes in January. It's not the changing time. It's the time to hold the course. It's the time to survive the last, coldest, harshest part of the winter. And it's not until spring, it's not until the coming of the new energy of the year, the rebirthing cycle, that we should actually be spending energy and time committing to new affairs. And so as you're planning your new year and thinking like January 2019, it's going to be something new, something big, and this can apply to any year going forward. It's worth considering that the post-holiday, oh gosh, I ate too much, I need to work out motivation is not the deep motivation that you need to make the changes that you want to make, right? In fact, you should sit with the post-holiday revelry, enjoy all of the good times that I hope many of you are having, and wait until the energy around you, the air itself, the sense of new beginning is more palpable, right? Where you can actually feel it. Because in most parts of the world, well, I guess in most parts of the northern hemisphere, which is what we're talking about, season's a little bit different in the southern hemisphere, but different conversation. The rhythm is the same, just whoop, inverted. But in most parts of the world where January are the winter months, right, it's important to recognize and understand that our bodies are responding to that winter force, that winter theme, that winter energy, whatever you want to call it. We are responding to the chi of winter, whether you can buy avocados in January or not, whether you're going to hit the gym and sweat it out and work hard or not. Your body is part of the natural environment. And though we have divorced ourselves, removed ourselves from the ability to truly understand what that means, right, through refrigeration and air conditioning and all those kinds of things, the reality is we're part of this natural environment. And so as you work toward the holiday, eat, drink, be merry, spend time with family and friends or whomever it is that's valuable to you, including yourself, right? Value yourself, nourish yourself. Don't beat yourself up about having a slice of pie or even a whole pie, right? A holiday time is a time for reflection, a time for nourishment, and then even after the first of the year, January 2019, there's time to put together your new plan. If you want to make changes, that's awesome. We support people making changes they want to make. But it's always best to set yourself up with a plan that you can execute, that you can manage, you can maintain, and that you can be successful at. And so finding the right rhythm with the season, with the environment, and with your health is going to be the way in which you actually create a successful life plan. All right? So, stay warm out there, friends. Enjoy your slice of pie at your holiday parties, and let's talk again soon. Travis Kern, Chinese Medicine, over at Root and Branch in Portland, Oregon.